That were broken into. There was a Charlotte Hornets fan shop that was ransacked, and there were coat hangers and debris all over the street. And as we kept walking down, there was broken glass, and now they're obviously attacking homes as well. Just a moment ago when we left you, there were some fires. You see the debris still there. The fire department came out and put these out. There's still a sizable crowd, fewer than 100 people. I would say between 70 and 100 people that are out right now. They're not only violent towards the police and destructive of property, they've also been hostile toward the media. Just a few hours ago, my colleague Ed Lavandera was shoved down to the ground. There was a moment where I thought somebody was going to assault me as well. So obviously this crowd is not the peaceful crowd that, for example, the wife of Keith Lamont Scott asked for tonight. She put out a statement, Riots Scott, saying that she wanted the crowd to be peaceful. She wanted people to exercise their First Amendment right and voice their displeasure with what she feels is injustice. Clearly, that's how it started. That's not what we've seen here unfolding tonight, Don.
Yeah, Boris, don't go anywhere because I'm going to keep you here. Again, I just want to read the statement exactly for what you said as we keep up these live pictures here. Keith was a loving husband, father, brother, and friend who will be deeply missed every day, Riots Scott said. As a family, we respect the rights of those who wish to protest, but we ask that people protest peacefully. Please do not hurt people or members of law enforcement, damage property, or take things that do not belong to you in the name of protesting. Clearly, that has not happened. Her words have gone unheeded and unnoticed tonight, it appears, in Charlotte, North Carolina. Boris Sanchez, I want to get back to you now because you said you're across from the police station, but you see no visible presence of police officers or at least no uniformed officers where you are?
Right now, where we're standing at this intersection, I don't see any. There was a police vehicle here just a moment ago, but it moved. From what I can tell, the police officers are down the street. We've actually been moving back toward the police station that is over to our left. On this side, there was a line of officers, and they started moving and pushing the crowd further and further back. The crowd started to disperse, but obviously there are still people here. And if I look in the distance, I'm just going to step aside for a moment. And it looks like the police are standing in a line down there. They've been very slow to come this direction. But obviously, the smell of smoke is still in the air. The violent element of this crowd has started to move. And from what I can tell, police are not moving with them. There have been several arrests tonight. We've seen several people get hurt. And it's unclear just the extent of the damage. Obviously, we'll find out tomorrow. But, Don, I can tell you, this is not... again, a peaceful protest, how this began, how this started, the dialogue that we initially saw between community members and the police quickly devolved into people throwing rocks and an agitation between police officers and the people in the street, Don.
It has turned violent. We can say that there were looters. We can say that there were people who were damaging and being destructive of property. There are people who have assaulted people, one of our very own on camera. Our Ed Lavandera and our Boris Sanchez has been out on the street and actually has had personal confrontations with some of the people there. I have to ask you, Boris, we're hearing that, again, a police officer was injured this evening. We're also hearing there's one death, which was civilian on civilian. Do you know where that happened?
Don, from what I can tell you, that information is actually in question right now. I was in that area when it happened. It was outside the Omni Hotel, again, where police went inside as they were being followed by protesters. When they came back outside, that's where that initial very violent confrontation began. At one point, there were very loud booms, very loud blasts, and we saw people running away. At one point in that back and forth with tear gas, I ran into a woman who showed me a video of a man on the ground bleeding profusely from the head. She said that that man was hit, she believed, by a police officer. The information that we've gotten from the chief of police is that it was a civilian-on-civilian incident. But again, this information is still coming in and it's unclear. And I have to tell you, Don, one of the things that frankly has poured gas on the fire of this situation is the fact that people are reading about this incident on social media. There are rumors going out, there are videos going out, and I heard several people say that, things that were incorrect, that the police were going after this guy, even though we've gotten confirmation that that was not the case. Again, this information is still coming in, but it fueled the fire, the emotion that was in the street. I saw a woman crying, reading that news out loud, saying it to people that were very angry, yelling, agitating things at police. Obviously, their frustration boiling over and becoming something less than civil.
Yeah, and Boris, you're exactly right. I've seen some of the same things as well, and many times as we have found, especially with the advent of social media, that people will read things there that are not true and that have not fact-checked, and they haven't researched the information, just read a headline or just a short tweet and believe that as fact, and it's not necessarily so. I want you to stand by, Boris, because I want to get to Ed Lavandera. Ed is also on the streets of Charlotte tonight. Ed, what can you tell us? Where are you and what do you see?
Well, we're making our way back toward a little bit much closer to the police station witnessing that stretch of road where the most intense violence has gone down, and we see the line of SWAT officers a ways down the street, and there is still a group of about 100 or so protesters, and right now there's a small group of them continuing to smash out windows. No officers able to make their way into that particular area. There have been some fires set in some trash cans and on the street. I think Boris has probably mentioned some of the latest.
Hey, Ed, can you stand by, please? I need to read something, and I'll get back to you. And this is from the city of Charlotte, from their official Twitter account. It says, correction update. Again, correction update. Civilian who suffered gunshot wound during protest is on life support, critical condition, not deceased. Again, that is an update from the city of Charlotte from their official Twitter account. Civilian who suffered gunshot wound during protest is on life support, critical condition, not deceased. Initially, we were told by the police department and the mayor, again from the official accounts, that there had been one death from a gunshot, but again we're told now that officially that person is on life support from that gunshot wound and is in critical condition. CNN's Ed Lavandera is on the scene, and Ed, as we were looking at pictures as you were speaking, we saw police officers trying to correct the situation, moving in on these demonstrators tonight. Many of them, some of them there peaceful, but many of them there as violent protesters.
Oh, no question. There's still, I was just starting to say that there's a small group of them. There's a Hyatt House Hotel and some storefronts on the bottom part of that building along this street, and you can hear them throwing large rocks and trying to smash out the windows there. No real police presence trying to move in to stop this particular group at this point, but there's probably still about 200 or so people in this area where I'm at, still causing a great deal of trouble, extremely violent. We were making our way back toward this area just a little while ago, and there were a group of officers moving around on 2 or 3 four-wheelers, and all of a sudden you start hearing these massive rocks being thrown at them, crashing around them. Very difficult situation, Don, because you just have in the darkness here and with the crowd of people, you have no idea where these rocks are coming from or where they're going to land. So, that makes this situation incredibly treacherous for the officers working the ground here, as well as for anyone else just kind of walking the streets at this point. Although people who are left here on the streets witnessing, they continue making the announcements that they need to leave the area. But this last group of people here, extremely hardened and not in any rush to leave the area at all, to say the least.
Is Neil Franklin still with us? Do we have Neil? Is he saying it? Neil, I want to ask you, Neil, I spoke with the mayor, and the mayor said that they were considering the possibility of a curfew. Should there be a curfew at this point?
Well, I don't know. We went through that in Baltimore, and I still have my reservations about what occurred in Baltimore. I think it's more important that we get our community leaders and other city leaders to come out and talk and mix with the people and manage to calm that way. A curfew is pretty extensive, and it can cause other problems, as we've seen in Baltimore. So that we need a really good assessment to that. Now, only the city can decide, only the mayor can decide that she needs to work with the police chief there and maybe some other city leaders, not just the political leaders, but community leaders as well, before she makes that decision. It's a very serious decision to make.
I want to get back to Congressman Meeks, who is the chairman of the Congressional Black Caucus, Representative Gregory Meeks. Representative, this is a long way from, the peaceful protests, the nonviolent protests that you grew up with and that I watched the end of as a child. This is a long way from that. Is this because of lack of leadership from mostly young people in this crowd? What's going on here?
Yeah, I think that, again, it's not as organized and people are not trained as back when John Lewis was protesting, and it was clearly that they stayed focused on the issue at hand. And the issue at hand, as we talked about earlier, is the killing of African American males particularly, but there's been others also. And so the focus moves away when you have this kind of violence. And so it cannot be condoned because, individuals who are out there to protest peacefully, they then are endangered also by those that are just there to disrupt. But we've got to try to, that's why my initial comments was that, and I think that I know that those of us on the CBC is that we've got to make sure that there's indeed transparency so that we can have that individuals can have confidence in the criminal justice system. And what you're finding now is that many do not have the confidence in the criminal justice system, particularly on local levels, where they know that police and district attorneys work together. And you've seen too many times where individuals are either not indicted at all or walk away when clearly something wrong has taken place.
Yeah.
So that's part of the problem. But you can never condone the violent acts that we see taking place right now because it takes away from what we want to do. We want to make sure that we are focused on changing what's been taking place in America in regards to the relationship between the police and African Americans.
You're right. There's no condoning this. And violence never, ever, ever works, especially when you're trying to bring about change in a democracy. Violence is usually the last place you want to go if you want to go there at all. How much does something like this, because obviously this is a serious situation, it's an issue that, one of the issues that we need to deal with in America, and especially with African Americans and with policing in this country, but how much of a setback is this for the cause, for people who are fighting for social justice, when these sorts of pictures play out live for the world to see on CNN and other places, Congressman?
Well, it does set back because it changes the dialogue. So for the last few hours, we're compelled to talk about those that are committing violent acts before everybody's eyes. So it changes the dialogue of what we should be focused on and talking about. So it is detrimental to the cause because the cause is you want to show, and that's what the cameras have done when we talk about the incident in Oklahoma, when we talk about what took place in New York. The cameras show where there is an act of police that is clearly criminal in nature also, where they're shooting unarmed people. Mm-hmm. That's what you want to be focused on, and not the bad acts of individuals who are now just destroying part of their own communities. Reverend
William Barber of Raleigh, North Carolina is the president of North Carolina NAACP. So how do you get this across? He's not, Reverend Barber, are you in? Are you there? Can you hear me? Reverend Barber is actually speaking to some of his sources on the ground, and we'll get back to Reverend Barber. As we look at these live pictures now, you can see police there in riot gear on the streets of Charlotte, North Carolina this evening, and they have been faced with a very tense and devastating and touchy situation of violence that has been going on the streets there. We have seen some of the members of our very own team here assaulted, at least one on camera and one threatened to be assaulted. Our very own Boris Sanchez, Ed Lavandera, was actually pushed over. And then we saw another member of the media who had been injured in this as well, and we saw police and civilians helping him away. Boris said that he had fallen near a trash can that had been set fire. And then you can see that police are donning gas masks as well. We have seen tear gas being thrown in to try to get some of the protesters to move out of the way and to get them under control. And if you can see that police are trying to hold the line. In some areas, our Boris Sanchez has been telling us that he sees no police officers, no presence of police officers. And in that area, we saw live on camera here on CNN, protesters, or looters, I should say, kicking in the windows of what Boris told us is an apartment building, and then there were other businesses that have been vandalized as well. So protests that were started peacefully last night, then turned violent last night, that had more than a handful of officers injured, and then turned peaceful again this afternoon, and this evening became violent again, and one police officer is injured, and now we're getting word that a person has been injured. Initially, Officials there told us that this person had died as a result of a gunshot wound, and now we're hearing this person is in critical condition in the hospital because of that gunshot wound. We have all the resources available here at CNN covering this breaking news story for you in Charlotte, North Carolina. Our breaking news tonight: protests turned violent in Charlotte after a fatal police shooting. This is CNN Tonight. I'm Don Lemon. It is getting close to the top of the hour. It is the top of the hour now. Protesters are clashing with police after the shooting death of Keith Lamont Scott. Police reporting tonight that one civilian has been shot by another, is on life support tonight in the hospital. One officer has been injured this evening. More were injured last night. North Carolina Governor Pat McCrory says he is sending troopers from the Highway Patrol to Charlotte. The mayor telling me this evening that other resources, she is seeking other resources that may be available to her to try to get a handle of this situation. CNN's Boris Sanchez has been out on the streets for us this evening covering these demonstrations, and he joins us now. Boris, what are you seeing?
Hey, Don, we're just getting a quick white balance on the camera here. Sorry.
It's okay. Live television, do your
Situation.
thing.
This is live TV, right? But right now there's what appears to be peace.
Right now appears to be peace.
It does, right? Yeah, it seems pretty peaceful, though we know that police are down the street, and the crowd that was out here just a few moments ago when we saw this apartment building getting ransacked seems to have dispersed. There were people cheering others on as they were destroying glass, throwing rocks, throwing rods at this building. Now it looks like people have started to move down the street. We haven't heard some of the loud explosions. Well, there you go. There it is. Tear gas again, it looks like, and people have started to run this direction. We've seen this really all night. The police officers will throw tear gas out, people will start running, and then a short while later when the gas dissipates, they'll run right back. These crowds have been out here for hours, Don, and they simply just keep moving further down the street and causing more destruction. You know, we've seen people get in the way of the protesters and the police trying to help people out. Earlier, we spoke to Toussaint Romain. He's a public defender that was here trying to advise people to get out of the police's way, trying to keep the peace, trying to demonstrate peacefully. He was actually praying at one point on the ground between police and protesters. But again, things quickly devolved after that. As police started making arrests and they started moving into the crowd to pick up agitators, things got out of hand. And as we started moving down the street, what you mentioned just a few moments ago, people started breaking into businesses, breaking through glass. I saw several businesses that were broken into. There were coat hangers and all kinds of debris in the street. Trash was set on fire. And the rancor of this crowd wasn't just geared toward the police officers. There were several civilians that were hurt in the process. We've been mentioning the one person that we've been monitoring who was apparently hurt by another civilian right outside the Omni Hotel, where this conflict really heated up. And they've also been very aggressive toward the media as well. Just a few feet from where we're standing, there was a cameraman that was on the ground incapacitated a few moments before that. There was a fire behind him. I'm not sure how he was hurt, but he had to be helped off the street. And again, what we're seeing now, this crowd that has not moved, it's at least 100 people, potentially more than 100 people, and they're walking back in the direction of the police. The police have staged a line. There's a SWAT line right behind, just out of our field of vision. We're not there, to be honest with you, Don, because we felt it wasn't safe to be there. We started getting looks, and people started getting very close to us, getting very physical and aggressive. So we decided to move a little bit further out. I think when things calm down, if they calm down and we don't see any more tear gas, we might try to approach it again to get a clearer picture of what's going on, Don.
A couple questions, Boris. So let's talk about the
Sure.
injured officer. Do you know where that happened? We understand that he has been taken to the hospital. He or she has been taken to the hospital. No condition on that officer. That's this evening. Other officers were injured last night.
Right, Don. So we're getting a picture right now. It looks like people are scampering out of there. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I'm not exactly sure how that police officer was hurt, but we were in several scenes where people were throwing glass bottles, cans of tear gas right back at police. And so it doesn't surprise me that someone got hurt and all of that. But, you know, it's truly sad, you know, when you have a situation where frustrations boil over this way and what started out as a peaceful protest quickly became very ugly, and protesters got in each other's faces. And now we see more tear gas being tossed. Police clearly trying to get these people to move out. The big problem here is that this is downtown Charlotte. There's a lot of intersections and places where people can just go and again wait for the gas to dissipate before they head right back in to confront police officers, Don.
Okay, and let's talk about the civilian, the protester, who we're now being told. Go ahead, Boris. What are you seeing?
Yeah, there are just more and more explosions getting closer and closer to us. It's obvious that the SWAT teams are moving further and further in. From what we can tell, it looks like some people are starting to dissipate. There are other people that are just getting beyond the gas. Again, just waiting to get close to the police again. From what I can tell, they are moving in, Don. You mentioned that civilian. That actually happened right in front of us. I didn't see it happen, but I heard the explosion when it did. And then moments later, I saw a crowd gather around a person. Later, I talked to a young lady who saw what happened and had a video of it. And there was a young man who was protesting that apparently got hit by something. He was on the ground bleeding profusely, and police started tending to him. Initially, it was reported that he was deceased, that he was killed. And we just got word that that was an inaccurate report, that in fact, the city of Charlotte tweeted out he was on life support. That's what we know about him right now. From what we've heard, the chief of police tweeted out earlier, from what we've heard, it was a civilian on civilian incident that was not police that caused that injury. But people here on the ground, as we mentioned earlier, Don, they're reading reports on social media. And I heard one woman start yelling at the crowd that, you know, they killed another one of us. They killed another one of us, suggesting that that young man that was badly hurt, you know, that happened at the hands of police, when clearly, you know, that was clarified later and it was brought out as misinformation. But that kind of rumor has fueled this crowd, and we've seen them get more and more agitated as the night has gone on. It's also because the people that were here initially peacefully have, for the most part, left, and there are people wearing masks, there are people covering their faces. You know, it just, you could feel it in the air. It's a different crowd than what we were seeing earlier.
So, Boris, you mentioned the person who was hurt, and this is, let's put this up, this is from officially from city official, the city of Charlotte, saying that the civilian who suffered a gunshot wound during Wednesday night's protest is in critical condition and on life support. The city of Charlotte said on their verified Twitter account. Again, this is a correction to earlier, that we got official information from them earlier. Apparently they are correcting that, as Boris just stated. Also, Boris Sanchez, if you're there, we're also getting word that you also witnessed this. This is from our affiliate there, Charlotte photojournalist from the NBC affiliate, WCNC, tweeted that a reporter and a cameraman from his station were attacked in the protest in Uptown and were transported by ambulance to a hospital to be treated for injuries. Is this the same thing that we witnessed with you just a couple moments ago?
I believe so, Don. Yeah, so we were walking away from police at an intersection, and right as we were crossing the street, there was a tear gas canister that was tossed. There was a loud explosion, and then right after that, we heard another boom, and we saw, when I turned around, I saw a man on the ground. And again, people are starting to get aggressive with us. Excuse me, sir. We saw that man on the ground, and he was incapacitated. He had to be held up. Right behind him, just a few feet away, there was a fire. I don't know how he was hurt, but it's obvious that he was in really rough shape. He didn't look like he knew what was going on. Fortunately, they were able to get him out of the way.
And so again, as happens in these particular situations, the crowd gets out of control, and then they try to, you know, assault or at least intimidate our camera people and our news people. I'm watching on a different feed here. Our folks there are very adept at taking care of themselves. Excuse me, I just want to make sure that our correspondents and our producers are okay there, our camera people. They can take care of themselves on and off camera out there, and as well as security, so we hope that they're okay, and again, we're keeping an eye on this situation. Boris, are you still there? Can you talk to us? Are you in a safe spot now?
Yeah, Don. Yeah, I'm trying to have a conversation with one of the protesters. He was actually engaging with me and asking me about what we were reporting. This goes back to what I was talking about before, as we hear another explosion behind me. You know, there's this deep mistrust among people, partly because of misinformation and partly because these incidents continue to happen. Just give me a moment, sir. So as we're watching this behind me, Don, you know, there's just mistrust. There's a level of mistrust for police officers and for the justice system in general. You know, these incidents continue to happen, and that's the frustration that boils over. However, when you see scenes like this, you have to ask yourself, where's the line? Where's the line? When does civility give way to violence, and when do innocent people, have to get hurt? That camera guy and that reporter that we were talking about, they were just doing their job. The people that live in this apartment building, they deserve to have their property destroyed. I'm not sure that's the case. And I was trying to make that point, but obviously, again, frustration boiled over and tempers started to flare. Don, to get back to what I was trying to say before, the line of police has started moving forward. The protesters have started moving back, but a lot of people are simply not going home. So we're going to keep watching the situation. I'll try to get back to you with what I see, Don.
Okay, so Boris, I want you to stand by. And listen, I want to tell you, if you're at home, I will give you this caveat. If you have kids in the room, or people you don't want to hear those types of words, you should probably get them out of the room, because this is a live situation that's happening here. We have a duty to cover, and you're probably going to hear some things that is not spoken in polite company. It is late here on the East Coast, early in our Western time zones, but we're following the developing situation that's happening in Charlotte, North Carolina, where there have been a number of people who have been hurt tonight, at least one who is in critical condition on life support. We are being told that it is a civilian on civilian, and one of them was a protester, and that person was shot. The injury is from a gunshot wound. We've also seen a news person, a photographer, we believe, from an NBC affiliate there, who was hurt, who was attacked on camera, and has been taken to the hospital. And we're also hearing that one officer has been injured this evening. That officer has been taken to the hospital as well. And as we know, there were more than a dozen officers who were injured in similar protests in the same city last night. As we watch our crews out in the field and they get more information, we want to bring it back here, continue to watch these pictures, and I want to bring in my law enforcement experts here. Law enforcement analyst Cedric Alexander has been joining us here for the bulk of the hour and is going to continue on with us here for CNN for as long as necessary. Jeff Rorta of the St. Louis Police Officers Association is here as well. Retired Maryland State Police Major Neil Franklin is with us, and Dimitri Roberts is a former Chicago police officer. Dimitri, I want to bring you in and talk to you about this particular situation. As you're looking, as a former police officer, you're looking at what's happening on the street. Boris Sanchez is saying in some areas there's no police presence. He sees no visible police, no uniformed police at least, and people are, breaking windows, and also he's being harmed in certain situations, or at least being threatened to be harmed.
Well, understand, Don, that the police resources have to be used sparingly, they have to be used appropriately, and they have to be used in a manner that allows the police department to engage where necessary. You see the line that they're holding. They're doing a very good job. I think that the leadership in Charlotte has put forth a new way to deal with these situations, as we see those officers standing their ground and not being as aggressive as we've seen in some other situations. But they have to be very specific in their deployments. A few broken windows does not equal over-aggression. It does not equal something that police should be engaged in at this moment, because it's a petty property crime. Not saying that people's property doesn't matter, but lives matter more, and the safety of those officers, as well as even the protesters and the rioters, is very important as well. And I think that we see these officers standing in that gap and doing what they're supposed to do in these moments.
Jeff Rorta, but I'm also hearing from people who are saying, listen, the mayor and whoever's heading the police department here, this is about law and order. They need to gain control back of their city.
Yeah, it is a police problem, not a political problem, Don. These things go a lot better when the police commanders are on the ground, are allowed to make the tactical decisions moment by moment, instead of politicians making political decisions from a distance. So I hope what's happening in Charlotte is that the police commanders and the tacticians on the ground are allowed to handle this very dynamic, frenetic situation. As you know, Don, it's like a rugby game. The ball keeps moving up and down the field, and it's really hard to contain and control. Mm-hmm.
If you're a citizen of Charlotte, North Carolina, surely you are of concern, as are people around the country here. But if you live in that immediate area, then you're worried about your safety, Cedric Alexander. You want police to contain this. Of course, this is the right for everyone to protest. You don't have the right to riot, but you want some control, especially if you're in that situation and you live there and people are kicking in your door.
Well, absolutely you do, and because in the morning, people in that community who live in and around that uptown area are going to come in that area and see a very different city than what they left it this afternoon. So people who live in and around that community, they certainly want to feel safe. They want to be safe. And Charlotte Police Department is providing that safety with the resources that they have available. And I think the way that Dimitri articulated the utilization of those resources is right on point. So everyone want to feel safe in Charlotte tonight and tomorrow. And I'm very certain and very confident that the police department and its leadership there is going to be there throughout the night, will be there tomorrow to make sure that people can safely come into their places of employment if they happen to be open, and to be able to move in and around that city in a way in which they feel some public safety.
I was speaking earlier to Congressman Meeks and also to the Reverend William Barber, and they were talking about how much this muddies the message and sets this movement back. According to the protesters, from our folks here on the street, protesters and organizers who were there in Charlotte earlier tonight are telling our producers that the protesters mainly went home after things turned violent, and this is only the troublemakers who are out there now. But how do you separate the two, Neil, if you're watching from home, or if you're a police officer, or in the minds of the people who are at home, they're one and the same, correct?
Well, it is difficult to separate the two, but one thing that there's a pattern that we tend to see as we go from city to city, whether St. Louis area or Baltimore, is that as you get later into the evening, most of the peaceful protesters do go home. You know, most of the peaceful, organized protesting occurs during the daytime. And then as you get later in the evening, you have more bad actors who are coming out under the cover of darkness. They don't want to be identified when they commit these crimes. And on top of that, Don, I just want to say to Boris and your camera crew there, I understand the importance of the work that they're doing and getting this footage for the viewers. But the fear that they spoke about, and the injured cameraman from the other affiliate, you know, respect that fear and make good judgment calls. When, you know, if you feel that you need to back up, then back up. Don't put yourself in danger. Their lives aren't worth it.
Yeah, you're right. And having been in several of these situations over the last couple of years, and then in other different situations, not particularly for rioting because of because of justice and criminal justice reform, but you're absolutely right. But over the last few years, starting with Ferguson, there's been some really tense and tough situations out there that the members of the news media are having to deal with. But our main focus as the news media is to bring it to you. As law enforcement, their main focus is to keep people safe and to bring about law and order. We want to bring this to the public so that they can see it and make their own judgment about it. I do have some new information. As you saw earlier here on CNN, Boris and his crew were out in front of the Hyatt House Hotel when you saw some of the tear gas being thrown, some of the objects being thrown, and really, you know, all hell breaking loose. We're being told that a valet at the front desk and a front desk attendant at the Hyatt House in downtown Charlotte were punched in the face by protesters. That's according to the Hyatt House hotel manager. Protesters came in the front of the hotel, used bricks to bust out windows. The hotel is currently on lockdown, and guests have been advised to stay in their rooms. So as we said here, Jeff, the people there want to be safe. And the protesters, or the people who are out here now, want to cause trouble. And so that is the situation that we're in now. Right,
Don. And, you know, Neil had it exactly right. You know, we called it in Ferguson, we called it shift change. You know, you could see the mostly peaceful protesters leave as night fell, and the mostly violent protesters show up, which is why I was such an advocate for curfews. I mean, there was this clear line of demarcation between protester and rioter behavior, and by just allowing that to continue to occur into the wee hours of the night was a disservice to everybody. And you know, I think that it also is a disservice to the peaceful protest movement that we allow the protest to be so muddied.
Yeah, I appreciate all of you standing by for me. Cedric Alexander is here, Neil Franklin is here, Jeff Ward is here, Dimitri Roberts here, and also Congressman Gregory Meeks joining us as well. Congressman, I know that you're very busy, but I know this is an important story, and he's the chairman of the Congressional Black Caucus PAC, and I thank you for sticking around with us because, again, we need your voice. But I need to get to something very important, and then I'll bring in my guests after that. This is Yolanda Haskins. She's joining us by phone. She is a neighbor of the Scott family. Ms. Haskins, I want to tell you, the Scott family put out this statement. She said, Keith was a loving husband, father, brother, and friend who will be deeply missed every day. And this was Rakia Scott who said that. As a family, we respect the rights of those who wish to protest, but we ask that people protest peacefully. Please do not hurt people or members of law enforcement, damage property, or take things that do not belong to you in the name of protesting. And now we have this. What do you say, Yolanda?
Yeah, I say that the people of Charlotte is doing this all the wrong way. I feel like as a citizen of Charlotte, North Carolina, resident, I believe that we should go about taking it from the economy instead of going out here riding and tearing up our cities. What these young men and women do not realize is these companies and businesses have insurance. So what's the use of you tearing up something they're going to build back in a day or two? We need to go about going through the judicial system and the economy and hit them where it hurts. We can't voice our opinion by being violent and being ignorant. This is an ignorant move at this moment, and it shouldn't be like this. Yeah. Mr. Keith will have this, so why would they do it? He can't voice his opinion right now. Yeah. He can't never voice his opinion because he's gone. We can't get that back. I understand if we all are angry, but we have to take it another route. If we want to make change, we got to do it ourselves. But how can we do it if we keep putting money into the system? Yeah. So where it goes at, we need to boycott and do not pay. Do not spend our money. Where is that? Let the system feel it where it hurt us at in their pocket. Everybody got to live off of $1. So why won't we just come together and take their dollars?
Yolanda Haskins, thank you so much. Yolanda Haskins is the neighbor of the Scott family, and she is saying, listen, there should be an economic boycott until change is made in Charlotte, North Carolina, or in the state of North Carolina. I want to thank her for that, but I want to read this. It's just in the CNN. The governor of North Carolina, Governor Pat McCrory, has declared a state of emergency upon the request of Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Chief Kerr Putney. The governor has also initiated efforts to deploy the North Carolina National Guard and the State Highway Patrol to assist local law enforcement. As I bring in now Congressman Meeks again, who joins us now. He is the chairman of the Congressional Black Caucus PAC. Congressman, now a state of emergency in North Carolina declared by the governor. This is just the beginning, it seems.
I hope this is the end, and those individuals who are committing now acts of violence, destroying property, which would deprive people from going to work tomorrow and earning their living, that they do not return to the streets, and to allow people who are upset at what has taken place to peacefully protest. That's what has to happen. So you do have to, make sure that there's a clear division between the two. And we want to make sure, though, that no other innocent lives are lost and or seriously injured. And so that is of deep concern as we move forward.
Mm-hmm. You said it's the end, and maybe you're correct, that this is maybe it's the beginning of the end of this. If it's a state of emergency, that means more resources will be moved into to Charlotte, North Carolina. Are you happy with that, Congressman?
Well, I want to make sure that everybody is safe.
Right.
I want people to be able to demonstrate in a peaceful manner, because I'm sure that there are many individuals in Charlotte who are upset at what took place and want a way to express themselves peacefully. And I don't want those that are expressing themselves in a violent way deprive those who want to express themselves in a peaceful way to be deprived from it. Mm-hmm. I want those individuals, because I think those voices do need to be heard because of what has taken place throughout America with regards to police and shootings, etc. I want those peaceful voices to be heard. So I want to drum out these bad ones. I want them out of there so that the peaceful ones can protest peacefully, and we can try to make a change, a real change in the criminal justice system.
The neighbor of Mr. Scott, of the Scott family, Yolanda Haskins, I'm sure you heard her, she was just on saying there should be an economic boycott of Charlotte. What do you think of that?
Well, I think that is a peaceful means of expressing what you want. I mean, already in North Carolina, We've seen where the National Basketball Association and other events, because of some laws that they have passed, we clearly discriminate against others, and so there's been an economic boycott in that regards. And so maybe there should be a further economic boycott, until if we don't have transparency. But again, we need to get all of the facts in this particular issue and make sure that we know what they are. And I believe that it is important for the Attorney General of the United States now to utilize her power to get involved in this and not just leave it to the local municipalities and the local police.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I want you to stand by, Congressman, because I want to, on the phone now is Congressman Robert Pittenger of North Carolina. You have been watching this. You're listening to Congressman Meeks as well. Can I ask you about, first of all, your initial reaction to what's going on tonight, and then I'll continue the questioning.
Well, it's tragic. It's sad. Of course, the loss of life is grievous, and I share the burden for the family. But I can say that watching the demonstration, watching the outrage, the looting, the violence, it's totally out of context of reality. We haven't seen the evidence. The CMPD, I've worked with them for 25 years. I've ridden shotgun with them on many occasions from the 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. hours. And I know what they go through, and this is true for law enforcement throughout the country. Mm-hmm. So, what we've seen now is just totally unacceptable. Yeah. Where is Martin Luther King today? Where's the spirit of Martin Luther King? We cherish him in his memory every February, and we honor him. And yet, where's the spirit of that? Where's the leadership that calls out? Where the pastors and the lay leaders and the political leaders who are just insisting that people convey their concerns in a peaceful way, and they look with some reason of hope, but also trust. Mm-hmm. The CMPD, the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department, they're there to protect everybody. Mm-hmm. Our chief of police is a wonderful man, an African-American man. The man who shot the young man, he's African-American. This is not a black-white racial issue, as been described by some. But to boycott, as one person said, because of the discrimination, where's the discrimination? This is nonsense. Mm-hmm. We need for truth to prevail, for truth to come out, but we need for people to walk in integrity. And for those who have come in now to agitate and to try to bring disorder and more violence and to raise the level of concern, where's the measured voice of the President of the United States? Where is the measured voice of the head of the Justice Department, our Attorney General? These are leaders for the African-American community. Where is their thoughtful response to bring calm, to bring assurance? The justice will prevail. It has prevailed in the past. We have found out the facts in other communities. And the facts, when they were found out, didn't line up with the hysteria and the untruths that were being said from the outset. So, let's bring truth into this dialogue. Mm-hmm. Let's honor the integrity of those who seek to protect the entire community. I love these men and women. I know many of them very well. I've worked with them for a long time, and I appreciate the leadership of our law enforcement. We need to appreciate the fact that they're working on everyone's behalf.
Congressman, this is your district, and we can tell that you're very passionate about this. It's very close to home. And you have to say earlier that you called in the interim as we try to figure out what's going on here, that we need every African-American pastor, as you said, and leader to rise to the challenge and speak with a sound system to this group of protesters calling for restraint and to be respectful in their protests. And again, you mentioned in your response earlier that Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., he would be proud of that kind of thoughtful discourse and leadership, you said. I want you to stand by because I want to bring in the governor of North Carolina, Pat McCrory. Governor, you declared a state of emergency moments ago. Why?
The chief of police requested that additional assistance. We've been preparing since 8 o'clock this morning for deployments to Charlotte in case this type of incident happened. And I was in conversations with the mayor and police chief throughout the day. And due to our state protocol, it's up to them to ask the governor for a state of emergency. So we are on standby waiting for that. And we got it about 15 to 20 minutes ago from the chief.
So State Highway Patrol troopers are there in Charlotte. What are their orders?
I'm gonna let the chief of police help give those orders and help them deploy it. I think most of the assets usually in these circumstances are to protect buildings and assets. So the Charlotte Mecklenburg Police Department can actually work the street, clear the street, the sidewalks, and make the appropriate arrests when necessary, while hopefully the guard that will be coming into the city during the evening will be protecting any buildings and assets so the police can do their job.
I spoke with.
You know, we cannot tolerate violence. We cannot tolerate the destruction of property, and will not tolerate the attacks toward our police officers that are occurring right now. And I feel very strongly about that. That is not the American way. These police officers are showing a tremendous amount of courage, and there's obviously a few hundred people who have come to our town center in Charlotte, North Carolina, which is a great city, and their major goal seems to be destruction and harm, and that's wrong, and it's unacceptable.
Yeah. I spoke with the mayor, Jennifer Roberts, earlier. She said she was considering a curfew. I'm wondering if you think there should have been a curfew in Charlotte tonight, and does this state of emergency put one into effect, essentially?
Right now it does not, but I was mayor of Charlotte for 14 years. It's one thing I don't want to do is second guess someone in the middle of an event, and I'm not going to do that. But a curfew is definitely a very strong option. I've used a curfew before as mayor of Charlotte during other events. The big disadvantage right now for any mayor and any governor is the use of social media, which is we didn't have that back in the days when I was mayor from 95 to 2007 or 2009. And this social media makes it very difficult because now the protesters can do a much better job in coordinating and directing people where our police presence is. And plus, frankly, the media, I want to encourage y'all not to encourage people playing to the camera, which could help incite violence for the wrong purposes.
Well, anytime that happens, we take the pictures off of those. But you know, we're in a tough situation because it's our duty to cover it, but we don't want to cover, you know, the.
Well, you're walking a fine line just like our police are walking a fine line, and I'm glad you'll respect that because you know that in your business, and I know that in my business that some people will incite violence for a show at the expense of our community and the expense of our safety of citizens and especially our police officers. These police officers are under a tremendous amount of stress right now, not just in Charlotte, but throughout the nation. And they're hardworking men and women who are also having, at times, difficulty walking that fine line.
Yeah.
And it's a life and death fine line.
I agree with you, and you know what? As we say, there is always one knucklehead, if not more, in any situation, and sometimes that happens.
I think I see more than one.
Yeah, if not more. Yeah.
And their goal is not to contribute to a discussion. Their goal is destruction and anarchy, and that is something our nation cannot accept. And as governor of North Carolina, I will not accept someone trying to turn a very good city into anarchy, and we're going to stop it and deal with those individuals. That's very well put, Governor. And I want to ask you about this regarding this video of the shooting of Keith Lamont Scott yesterday. What's the law in North Carolina about the release of this video, and do you believe that this video should be released? You know, I think it's appropriate for me to let the police and the chief and the mayor respond to that. Because one thing I learned as a mayor for 14 years, and now I'm on my 4th year as governor, is that you don't want several people speaking on behalf of the leadership in a city, and I'm not going to begin that process. I wouldn't appreciate it if I was mayor and the governor started doing that. But there is a new law that's coming into effect actually October 1st, and I'm sure the mayor and the police chief will give you details about the existing law and the new law that's actually not coming into place till October 1st. But I will say this, we have to be extremely concerned about videos because we also have to protect the constitutional rights of our police officers to ensure that they get a fair hearing, while it's at the same time respecting the families. That's another very important ingredient, and then also the transparency to the public. But we do have constitutional rights here that have to be protected, and investigations have to be protected. So regarding videos, it's also a very fine line, very similar to the one you're using tonight, and what you show in your video and what you don't show in your video.
Don't you think, though, I mean, I'm not saying that you're advocating for the release of it, and I know that you don't want to speak for the mayor and for other officials, but if you see it in front of your eyes, for your very own eyes, that would, don't you think that there would be no question about what happened? Some of this may be avoided.
Well, one thing that I've learned in this business for now 25 years, as a city councilman, chairman of the Public Safety Committee, as a mayor for 14 years, now as a governor for 3, one viewpoint of a video doesn't often always tell the whole story. The angles can make a difference, and the not hearing often in the video, so that the complexity, the video is one piece of evidence, and we have to be very careful. And then I go back to the constitutional rights of our police officers, which you also have to protect.
Yeah,
and it's a very delicate line that we as society are dealing with all the new media that is available. In one respect, it can be used to a very great positive thing for our public. In another way, the video can also be abused.
You haven't seen this video, have you, Governor?
No, sir.
You haven't?
No,
Okay.
sir. I'm going to leave that up.
Yeah.
It's my job to allow the local police department and local police chief do their job. Most likely, the state will be involved in. And this is another reason I have to be very careful what I say, to make sure if the SBI, which I'm in charge of, if they take control of the investigation, I have to be very careful in my comments out of respect of all parties.
Okay, understood. So, listen, obviously no one condones the violence. We have spoken out against it here this evening. You have as well. But you know that you represent even the people who are being violent, or citizens of your state. Do you understand the concerns that have brought people out to, and maybe this level of anger and frustration?
I understand concerns, and I understand frustration and anger, but I never will respect violence. Violence is unacceptable, and we've got to get that word out. Violence of throwing things at our police officers, violence of breaking windows. Violence only causes more chaos, and violence does not seek a solution. Good, positive, constructive dialogue, this is not the first time. When I was mayor of Charlotte back in 96, 97 time period, we had some very tough shootings, very similar to what we're seeing now throughout our nation. And the way we resolved it is through conversation and facts and patience. And violence is the last alternative. And we have some great leaders who used to espouse that, including the great Martin Luther King, who did not promote violence whatsoever. I just strongly disagree with any violence or destruction of property. And sadly, it looks like we've had one person killed tonight, and that does no one any good.
Unless you have some new information, what the latest, Governor, you should know that we got, which was a correction, was that that person was on life support and was in critical condition. Unless that person has passed within just the moments that we were speaking, there was a correction.
Thank you for that clarification.
Wow. Well, I mean, look, this is a correction. It's up on now from the city of Charlotte, saying the civilian who suffered gunshot wound during protests is on life support, critical condition, not deceased. That was the official information that everyone got earlier, including you, and then this just came out just a short time ago.
Violence,
right?
I wanted one comment I made earlier today in support of the police chief and the community leaders in Charlotte is we want peace, we want conversation, and we also want to support our police who are right now under a great deal of stress in downtown Charlotte. Again, a city that I have a passion and a love for. I'm actually in Raleigh now in the state capitol, but I know every block of that city blindfolded. And it's a beautiful, beautiful city with great people, and it's a very good police department with good training, and they're going through a difficult time, and we as a nation and as a state are going to do everything we can to support them, while also recognizing this very very tough situation for our citizens. But
you said
no
earlier,
violence is going to be allowed.
You said earlier that video can be taken a number of different ways and taken out of context. Where are you on the body cam law? Do you support it?
I'm an advocate of a body cam, but I signed the body cam law, which allows the video to be shown to the family, and also respects the right of our police officers, and also has a way to show the public. So it's it's respecting the public, respecting the family, and also respecting the constitutional rights of a police officer. Mm-hmm. And that's the fine line we're trying to walk. And we'll always try to improve upon this, because Don, as you know, with technology, there's something new we learn every day, and there are a lot of lessons that we're going through, and that includes policing and technology. And there are also issues of there are a lot of issues regarding the privacy of other people in videos.
Why not release it to the public, though? Because you're the State Attorney General and the ACLU are upset that it blocks it from the public viewing.
Don, I've got to respect the constitutional right of our police officers and also the investigation. And we're also.
What about the constitutional right of the citizens, though?
And I'm going to protect a person's constitutional right at the same time.
And the constitutional right of the citizen?
Absolutely. In fact, some citizens in videos we might need to protect also in videos. Yeah. Because a lot of times we have innocent people within a video, videos that might be in domestic violence disputes and so forth. Listen, Don, I got to get back to work. I've got a lot of work to do.
Governor, before you go, I know you have to go, but can I ask you one question?
Yeah, I got a lot of work to do tonight.
Okay. Can I ask you one question before you go?
One more. Yeah. We got to get to work.
Great. A public defender was on the ground. He told CNN earlier that leaders needed to stand up, have Charlotte's leaders. Do you think Charlotte's leaders have been visible enough since this shooting occurred and these protests have started?
The time to do an evaluation is afterwards, not in the middle of the crisis. And right now we're in the middle of crisis. Let the leaders do the best job they can and respect them and deal with very difficult circumstances. And that's exactly what I'm going to do.
The governor of North Carolina, thank you very much, Governor. Governor Pat McCrory joining us this evening with some very good information and how he feels about what's going on there, the shooting of Mr. Scott, and also about the protests that have been happening and the violence as well. Let's bring in now CNN law enforcement. Do I still have Gregory Meeks with me? Is Congressman Meeks? No? No, Congressman's not with us. Okay, let's bring in law enforcement analyst Cedric Alexander, Jeff Ward of the St. Louis Police Officers Association, retired Maryland State Police Major Neil Franklin, and Demetri Roberts, a former Chicago police officer. So, Cedric, you heard what the governor had to say there. It's not the time right now, in his estimation, to assess the situation. He is for body cameras, but not necessarily releasing the video to the public, just to the family and to to investigators. What do you make of the governor's comments?
Well, I don't really know what to make of them, but I know what is going to be of question, the reason for the body cameras, and certainly we have to respect the integrity of the investigation. But there's going to be an expectation from the public, from the citizens in which police officers serve. They're going to want to, at some point, and within some reasonable amount of time, an opportunity to view those videos. And the public has the right to be able to do that. Because if we don't do it, in a timely manner, what it creates is a continued atmosphere of what appears not to be a transparent investigation. Mm-hmm. So I don't know what they're doing in North Carolina. I'm not that familiar with it, but I know this, is that the 21st Century Task Force report, wholly without question, supported the whole idea of body cameras, and body cameras are becoming more and more readily available in the police departments across the country, so we're making those purchases. And we do have to protect the rights of everyone involved. But at the end of the day, if you ask the American public, yes, we understand the investigation needs to be conducted, and they're okay with that. But within some reasonable amount of time, people want to see those videos for themselves. Yeah. And we need to be able to do that.
Yeah,
without exception.
The governor recently signed, it's called House Bill 972, which is, the body camera bill there in North Carolina. There has been some consternation about it because even the Attorney General, the state's Attorney General, said that it could have the opposite effect on minimizing police accountability because the Attorney General believes, I should say, that it should be released to the public. Cedric Alexander, I think you're saying you also think it should be released to the public as well. The public should be allowed
Absolutely,
to do it.
that's what I'm saying.
And
Yeah,
so
I
just want to go around the horn here and see what, as a former police officer, Dimitri, do you think that video should be released?
Well, I think, again, Don, this is a great opportunity to partner with the community. And let's come up with a sensible solution that we can all stand behind. And maybe they don't release it to the full public, but maybe they identify key members of the community that they can have a conversation with, show the video to, and allow those individuals to be empowered with the right information to go back and hold town halls, conversations with the community around these issues. They have to bring the community into the fold. I'm not advocating to completely release the video to the full public, but I am saying bring the community involved, get the community involved, give them a voice, and give them the resources necessary to go back to the community.
Jeff Ferrota?
Don, law enforcement used to have the luxury of withholding investigative details to protect the integrity of an investigation, but there's a new balancing test. You've got the potential loss of life and property. You've got the undermining of public trust, and you've got this constant possibility of ambush and assassination of police officers when misinformation rules the day and a false narrative fills this void. So yes, law enforcement's got to be more nimble in releasing every bit of evidence available to them, including video.
And Neil Franklin, what say you?
I agree. Within a reasonable amount of time, it needs to be released. And I think to help with that, the transparency is that we should have a standing policy, maybe at the state level, and this needs to be researched, but maybe at the state level, where all of these deaths at the hands involving our police officers, all of these deaths should have an independent investigation. I think that would be critical.
As we continue on to do, should we get to our guest? We want to get to our guest? Oh, okay. I wasn't sure the guest was ready. Stand by, gentlemen. I want to bring in a guest. Her name is Ann Albright. She was at the protest earlier this evening. So, Ann, since you were at the protest, you said you were at a church when you heard about the shooting and you had already left the protest. So tell us about it. You were there, you left, what happened?
Yes, sir. Thanks, Don, for having me on. That's Annette Albright. But, yes, I was at the protest earlier. It was very peaceful. I had my granddaughter with me. I stopped and took pictures with the police officers and thanked them for being out to protect the protesters. And then we moved on into Little Rock Church. I noticed that a group came up that was a little more rowdy than the group that was inside. So I heard someone say it's some tension growing. So that group left. They moved on, and it was a much younger crowd. As we were sitting inside of the church listening to the speakers, a young girl came into the church, maybe in her early 20s. She was visibly upset, and she was almost crying. I asked her, was something going on, and she said there had been a shooting at the Omni Center, and the SWAT team had been called in, and things were very chaotic. So I immediately notified the leaders that was in the church that something was going on. I saw one of the county commissioners let her know what was going on, and she asked me to go find out if something definitely was going on.
What do you make of this happening in your city, being there for the the protests that happened, and then all of a sudden all this chaos breaks loose in your city? What's going on, Annette?
Don, what I think is going on is that we don't have leadership that this crowd that is out here now, that they can relate to, and that someone can get out there with them and give them some direction. And that was my concern all day, was like, okay, we get it. We understand how to protest and demonstrate and have our voices heard in a civilized way. But what happens when the younger crowd joins in? Who's going to lead them? Who's going to instruct them? who's going to teach them to have a voice without destroying the city? And it was like exactly what I could foresee. That's what's happening. And I was trying to get some of the leaders out of the church to get them out there to this group that was, you know, I saw riding four-wheelers, flipping off the police officers. And I was like, you know, guys, y'all need to get out there and talk to these kids and help them to understand that this is not the right way. But by then, it was just total chaos.
Let's talk in a larger sense of what's happening there. Can you speak to the anger and the frustration that drives people out to protest, and then some people to go beyond that and violence occurs?
I think, Don, that some people are just taking advantage of an opportunity.
Well, I mean, what drives people to protest in the city? Because you were out there as part of a peaceful protest. Why were you out there earlier?
Well, I was out there because the message that I wanted to get out was that, yes, we have to work with the police. We need to find out the truth. Remain calm. It's a process. The judicial system is a process. The investigation has to happen. But just remain calm, protest, but protest peacefully.
What's going on in Charlotte now that makes people want to, besides the shooting is a last incident, but is there an undercurrent? Is there a mistrust of police? Are people frustrated? What's going on?
I think it's just, Don, things that have gone on nationally. It was just almost to the boiling point because of everything that has been going on around us. And people, you don't have a trust for the police, and they don't see the police responding to people of color like they do white people. You know, I was sitting here watching the news the other day when they took down the guy in New York, and it was a shootout, and he came out of there with his life on a stretcher. You have a man that steps outside his SUV, and he gets 4 shots, and he's dead. And at the time, he was not committing any crime. So that is fueling it, and then everything else is going on. I mean, it's just a perfect storm.
What do you think, Annette, of how police have handled this evening? Have they shown restraint? Because I think initially you said that there were too many police. Oh, you were trying, when you were trying to go back, there were too many police and you couldn't get back. How do you think police have handled this this evening? Have they shown restraint?
Oh, absolutely. They have shown restraint. They have been extremely polite. It was the protesters that I saw. I mean, even as I'm sitting in the car and like 6 or 7 four-wheelers come past us and flip the cops off, they didn't do anything. They didn't even react. They just held their position. And I was like, wow. And a street had just been blocked off. It just so happened that I knew a back way to get out, and I told the girl that was driving, you know, let's get out of here. And the police officers are showing a lot of restraint. They're very professional in what they're doing. It's more like the protesters are trying to antagonize the cops into coming after them.
As we see often in these situations, sadly, there are people who are out there for reasons that are warranted, and they are protesting peacefully, which is their right, and then all of a sudden it devolves into people who are not doing the right thing, and it turns chaotic. Thank you, Annette Albright. We're glad you're okay, and thank you for calling into CNN, okay?
Okay, thank you.
I appreciate that. If I can bring the panel back in, Neil, she speaks to something that's very important in talking about the frustration, you know, seeing what happened in New York and New Jersey. That man still has his life and is in a hospital. Police are, you know, trying to talk to him to figure out why he would, you know, he's accused now of setting off explosives here, but why he would do something like that. And then you have the man in Oklahoma who lost his life, and then you have this other man here in North Carolina who lost his life as well. She's speaking to the frustration of the community. When you look at these pictures, it's hard to talk policy and solutions over such pictures, especially when you have it unfolding in front of your face, which is what we should be talking about, but this veers us completely off course.
It is, and the difference, and let me just say that the gentleman who set off the explosions in New Jersey and New York, he was shot multiple times. I'm surprised he is alive. When you do use deadly force, you don't know if that person's going to survive or not. So it could be one shot, it could be multiple shots. One thing that's unique about what we're seeing here, and we hear your guests talking about, you know, the rioting, the disorganized protest. Well, it's no longer protest at this hour. These are people committing crimes of violence and destruction. So let me just say that. But when you look back on the protests that we had in the 1960s that were very organized, they were planned. Many of these protests were planned months in advance. And we had great leadership, not just one or two leaders, but throughout the entire protest. You know, our churches were greatly involved in that. But today there is a huge disconnect between the church and young people. There is no relationship for the most part. So the leadership within our church has a very difficult time, if any success at all, in trying to guide these young people. We need to come up with better solutions. We need to get to a place where we do start discussing this policy, and we need to plan it out in advance. We can't wait for the next person to die at the hands of the police, because when that happens, people react immediately. They react to misinformation. They react to all of the deaths. They see and feel all of the deaths that have occurred. You know, Tamir Rice, Eric Gardner, Laquan McDonald, you can just keep naming them. That's what they feel. That's what they see. We need to start an organized response to what we're experiencing now and keep it going, keep the conversation going. So when these happen unexpectedly, we have some sort of control and something in place that's working.
I want to, Cedric Alexander, read something for the audience and for you to respond to, and this is something that I have gotten here from someone who is a respected member in the public. It says, don't you think it's mostly just immature, somewhat ignorant, under 25-year-old white, Latino, black, etc., that are creating all this unrest? Do you think that black leaders, for the most part, are sending the wrong message? Too bad MLK is not around. If you look at all the protesters, they are young, they need leaders that don't fuel the fire, but ones that give them strength for positive change. Look inward first. Don't always blame others for your problems. Don't ask for help all the time, but you know help is there for those that try. And again, what do you make of those comments?
Well, let me say this. You have a number of young people out there that's 25 years in that cohort group, 25 years of age or younger, who are doing some tremendous things in this country and making some tremendous contributions at a whole lot of different levels. And certainly you're going to have the population, many of those young people we see out there tonight, who somehow along the way got disenfranchised, were marginalized, did not have maybe the opportunities they should have had at no fault of their own. However, we have to figure out in many of our very distressed communities who require oftentimes the most police services, we got to figure out how do we put resources and value into those communities where there are opportunities for those young people to do different things. You know, a lot of times you hear people talk about like Black Lives Matter, but they are a group of their time. And even though they may not be as organized and as focused as we would like for them to be, they have made a statement, and some of it appears in some cases to frustrate a lot of people of all groups, but they are of their time. But I think at the end of the day, for all, you know, and all of this, Don, is that we all have some responsibility to help move law enforcement forward. And the men and women we see out there tonight that are doing a tremendous job that they're doing and across this country, we have to really applaud them, because they're trying to make an environment safe for everyone, even for those that are out there doing dastardly deeds tonight. Those officers are still responsible for their safety. And they're doing the very best they can under the conditions in which they work up under. So we got a lot of young people out there that are doing good things, and we have those that are not doing good things that have to be dealt with appropriately.
The Attorney General of North Carolina, Attorney General Roy Cooper, calls for peace in the midst of protesting in North Carolina. That statement just coming out. He said, we must come together as a community to get answers and find a better path forward. Already tonight we have seen civilians, police, and emergency responders injured. This must stop. Again, he sent that out moments ago via Twitter. He's also, by the way, running for governor of North Carolina. Again, we're following the breaking news here on CNN. It's happening in Charlotte, North Carolina. These are live pictures, and I would like to thank our affiliate WSOC for these pictures, and all our affiliates down in North Carolina for helping us bring this not only to the country but to the world. There were peaceful protests that devolved into violent protests earlier this evening, and they're still continuing on in many cases. And you can see that police are still out on the streets, and some of these people, not protesters at this point, they're looters, and they are people who are there just to cause chaos. Some of them have been setting fire to trash cans. Some of them have been kicking in doors of businesses. Some of them have been assaulting people. We've seen it happen live here on CNN. A member of our own team, Ed Lavandera, was pushed by one of the people who are out there. One or some of them threatened our Boris Sanchez and our camera crews. You've seen them pushing our camera crews back, sticking their hands in the lens of the camera. And then also a camera crew from another station there, the producer and I believe the camera person had to be taken to the hospital because of injuries that they sustained. Also, we're being told that one officer tonight was injured, and also one person is on life support because of a gunshot wound.
This is CNN Breaking News.
Our breaking news here on CNN as we look at these live pictures from Charlotte, North Carolina. Protests turned violent there in Charlotte after a fatal police shooting. This is CNN Tonight. I'm Don Lemon. Again, protesters clashed with police after the shooting death of Keith Lamont Scott. Police reporting tonight that one civilian has been shot by another and is now on life support. One officer has been injured. The city is on a state of emergency now, under a state of emergency tonight. North Carolina Governor Pat McCrory says he is sending troopers from the Highway Patrol to Charlotte. He joined us just a short time ago here on CNN. He is also calling for peace tonight, as are all public officials, as are the family members of Mr. Scott this evening, calling for a peaceful protest and telling people not to harm anyone and not to loot businesses. I want to go now to Marcus DiPaolo, who is a freelance photographer. He is on the scene there tonight. Marcus, what are you seeing?
Hey, I'm right now a little bit of a short distance away from the main protest group. But just over the past 30 minutes, I've seen fireworks thrown at police. I've seen tear gas used every couple of minutes. Just to do this phoner, I had to take my gas mask off, which is something I haven't done since about 7 p.m. today. Things are really devolving very quickly down here. And, oh, shit. I'm sorry. Right now I'm seeing a sign being used to batter someone. I'm just going to back away from this very quickly. There's a car going around it. This group is very large. I'd say it's about 300 people, but it's spread out over several city blocks. And that's about all I can tell you from my vantage point right now.
Are you in a safe position? Can you continue to talk to us, or do you need to go, Marcus?
I can keep talking to you. I just have to be very careful. If I hang up, don't worry, I'm fine. I'm just taking cover behind something to conceal myself.
So you're feeling you have to take cover now on the streets, even at this late hour, because what's going on?
So what's happening is random people are getting assaulted. I was thrown to the ground earlier. I saw several photographers smacked in the face. My phone was smacked. Someone right now, that sound, I don't know if you can hear it, is kicking a piece of metal down the street towards a car. He kicked it kind of in the air, so it hit the car. I'm passing a smashed window right now, and I can tell you that I saw the Garden Bar and Grill having several windows smashed and people trying to enter. There's someone running down the street right now screaming. It's a woman, but I can't see what she's running from. Again, it's a very fluid situation down here. I don't know what you're seeing on the helicopter feed, but if you're able to go to the corner of South College and East Stonewall on one of your helicopters, you'll see a large group of police finally moving in. This is the first group of police that I've seen since they took the highway back from protesters just about 10 minutes ago.
The shots that we have from the helicopter from WSOC, they're showing scenes of emergency vehicles and uptown. North Carolina, but it is not focused on the scene where you are, and we don't have control of these pictures. But it's interesting that you feel that you have to take cover because of the randomness of the situation. How much presence are you seeing? I believe this is the corner that you're speaking of now. There's a parking lot in the corner and then a parking deck in the background. Is that correct?
That's right. I'm in front of the Levine Center, in front of the loading dock. I'm actually going to move because I don't want anybody listening to know exactly where I am. This group is still very active, but starting to decrease in size a little bit. I think that line of police bicycles scared them off a little bit. One thing that I saw just 15 minutes ago that I can tell you about is a very large line of police using non-lethal pepper balls, using automatic. Sorry, we just got a window broken. I'm just going to take a quick hide behind this pole right now. There are several fire department vehicles. I can't tell whether the window is broken in front of a fire department window was broken from the fire department vehicle. No, I'm seeing it now. The window broken on the parking deck. We're passing the Goodyear, and this crowd is still very angry, still smashing things.
Yeah, we can see a number of people from one of the shots that we have, Marcus, is that they're running, and there are police and vehicles that are trying to get them with flashing lights to remove them from the corners in vehicles and then blocking the streets off. And there is actually a police vehicle that appears to be going.
Okay, they just smashed the Goodyear again.
Yeah.
At least several windows broken on the Goodyear that I'm passing right now.
Yeah.
And, you know, what's interesting about this is it's really just, I covered Ferguson, I covered Baltimore, I covered Milwaukee. This is by far the worst violence and worst property damage I've seen in the past 5 years of covering stuff like this.
Well, I mean, Marcus and Ferguson, there were a number of businesses that were set fire and people lost their businesses. This is still very early on. I don't think that we have seen the type of damage that we saw in Ferguson, Missouri, even Baltimore at this point.
Absolutely, yeah. There haven't been any fires, but I'd say that the actual total dollar count is going to end up being higher just because of the sheer scope of this thing. I haven't seen many fires set beyond a couple in trash cans, a couple bushes set on fire, and some grass set on fire in the middle of the highway, but that was taken care of very quickly by police.
Are you able to see these officers on bicycles?
Not anymore. And it's making me a little bit nervous. We're now headed towards the Mint Center, if that means anything to anybody. I can't quite make out the cross streets, but I am going to cross the street because this crowd is, there's a couple people that are headed towards a vehicle in the middle of the road, and I've seen what happens before they surround a vehicle, and if the car doesn't do exactly what they want them to do, they'll just smash the windows.
Mm-hmm. And you've seen that happen several times this evening?
Several times this evening.
Were you able to see the damage at the Hyatt?
Yeah, I was able to see the damage at the Hyatt. That was where we were camped out for a good hour or so, maybe a little bit more. And just windows smashed everywhere. And that was where the CVS was looted. And I can tell you that I saw both an ATM knocked over and people grabbing money from the ATM. And also from the CVS, people grabbing everything from alcohol to shoes from the CVS.
Did you see the clerk in the hotel get assaulted? We've gotten a report from the hotel manager, the front desk manager, that they're on lockdown and the guests have been told to stay in their room, and one employee was assaulted.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't see anything like that. The extent of what I saw in front of the Hilton was the man who got shot, and what I'm hearing from CNN's reporting is that he's still alive but in the hospital. Yeah. I did see him lying on the ground, and police got him, to their credit, pretty quickly. They lifted him up and got him out of there.
Did you see the actual shooting, or did you see the after him laying there?
No, I just saw him laying there, but he did not look good.
Describe to us, without becoming too vulgar or overt, what happened? What did you see?
I don't know exactly how I can tell this story without being too vulgar, but I'll give it a try. I was standing on a small balcony. The way Charlotte works is it has second level to its city, at least in the middle part of it. I don't know exactly what it's called. I was standing there. I heard and saw several flashbangs and some tear gas going off as well. Rushed down, and in the chaos, I saw a couple more and heard a couple more pops, and those pops were indistinguishable from each other. They could have been gunshots, they could have been tear gas, they could have been flashbangs. But I did walk up, and I saw someone lying on the ground. I saw a bunch of people running in to help that person. I'm walking in front of the Bank of America building right now on, I can't quite see what street this is. I'm walking in front of the Bank of America building, and there are several windows smashed. There are two people inside. They're looking out and taking pictures. There's a very small security presence inside. I think that's probably the wiser. There is a very large hole in this building, and I can't tell exactly what it is, but it does look like an office building with a Bank of America attached to it.
So you were out and you saw, did the person come running out of the building, or were they shot on the street? What happened?
I saw that. Again, I don't know how accurate this is. I can only tell you what I saw. When I walked up to it, the person was shot lying on the ground and on the sidewalk in the area that people would drive out of the Hilton.
And where are you now, Marcus? Stand by, Marcus.
Right now I'm on.
Stand by. I just want to update our viewers. If you're just tuning in, you know, it's pretty close to midnight, just after midnight here on the East Coast, 10 minutes into the midnight hour, and we're still watching pictures. We have been watching these pictures from and following this story from Charlotte, North Carolina for the bulk of the evening here on CNN. My colleague Anderson Cooper started with the protests that turned violent earlier at 8 p.m. during his broadcast here on CNN. And we've seen several of our colleagues who have been, or at least several news people who have been assaulted. Our very own colleague Ed Lavandera was pushed by one of the, I won't call them protesters, one of the rioters out there. And then we've seen people from other news stations being assaulted as well, people pushing our camera people, and we've also seen people kicking in windows and doing all sorts of things, obviously, that they should not be doing. One person, we're told, is on life support from a gunshot wound. And another person, a police officer, has also been injured this evening. We're talking to Marcus DiPaolo, who is a freelance photographer. He's giving us an update of what's happening live on the streets of Charlotte, North Carolina right now. Where are you and what are you seeing, Marcus?
Right now I'm on West Martin Luther King Jr. Drive and South Tryon Street. I'm still seeing a rather large crowd of about 200 people continuing to walk down South Tryon Street. And what you're hearing probably in the background is a group of very loud motorcycles and three-wheelers. They've been going around all night. I haven't seen them do anything other than ride around. I do apologize for the sound.
That's okay. We can hear you. Go on.
That group that I've been following has calmed down somewhat. I haven't seen as many windows smashed in the past 15 minutes. I'm actually probably going to break off unless you have any more questions for me.
No, we want you to be safe, and go ahead, continue to do your thing. Marcus DiPaolo, thank you for getting any new information. Make sure you get back in touch with us here on CNN. So, again, these are live pictures still happening late into the midnight hour here on CNN. These are police that have joined now in the police officers who are in riot gear and forming a line there on bicycles. These pictures coming to us from our affiliate WSOC in Charlotte, North Carolina. They have been following this from their helicopter and also on the ground with their ground cameras all evening here on CNN. This is an unfolding situation, a very sad situation, a peaceful protest that turned violent earlier this evening. There was a violent protest that happened last evening as well in North Carolina. More than a dozen police officers had to be taken to the hospital, or at least were injured, I should say, to clarify, were injured yesterday evening. And now, today, at least one, and then there's one person, a civilian, from a gunshot wound on life support this evening. All of this because of a shooting of a man near an apartment complex in Charlotte, North Carolina. Yesterday, as they were looking for someone else, they came upon this man, Mr. Scott, and they shot him and killed him. And now the community there is outraged. They are protesting. Some are not protesting. They are rioting this evening. Most of the peaceful protesters, if not all, left earlier, and now it's left to the rioters. Let's get to CNN's Ed Lavandera. Ed has been covering this for us all evening here on CNN. Ed, you were pushed on camera that it was indeed an assault, and now here you are a few hours later. What's going on?
Well, this stretch where there has been the focus of so much violence here tonight has really been dispersed over here to the side. The SWAT officers that we had seen throughout much of the evening, essentially getting a chance to take a little bit of a break here, but also gives us a chance to kind of move into this section of the street here to give you a sense of the violence here. Spray painting Black Lives Matter on these windows. This is a hotel. Guests inside the hotel were basically locked down in here as these windows were smashed out here. You can see into the hotel bar and lobby. And they're already starting to clean up here. What has been fascinating is this is probably a 12, 15-story foot hotel, all of this unfolding below them, and you can see the guests standing in the windows looking down at everything. But this is, a little while ago, I think we were talking about the windows that were being smashed out, that the officers hadn't made their way here. This is the remnants of what you've seen here. It's hard to see through the shattered glass, but originally someone had come in here and spray painted Black Lives Matter, the matter's down here, and then just started pummeling these windows with giant rocks. I can show you a little bit of here's one of the rocks. This is what was being used to smash the windows here. So you can see this is the kind of things that were being thrown, not just here at the windows, but also at the SWAT officers that were working the scene here. All of this going on for about a 3 or 4 block stretch along this street, and is several hours of damage that has been inflicted, and it gets worse as you move your way down the street. That's where when we first approached and got here to this scene, this is where we saw people just unloading and causing havoc on this street.
Ed, have you had a chance to speak to some of the people, like the people who are cleaning up these, having to deal with this? Have you had a chance to talk to them? What are they saying?
No, obviously stunned and rather shocked by what was going on. Just 1 second, wait for these guys to walk past us. There's a great deal of insecurity as all of this was unfolding outside of their hotel. In fact, when all of this started, one of my colleagues told me that they had seen a restaurant. There were people just calmly, peacefully eating inside a restaurant when the windows started getting smashed out. This is a group of, Don, I don't know if you saw this earlier in the evening, a group of motorcycle riders that have been riding up and down through the downtown streets, doing just that. So I don't know how much of my voice you can hear.
We can hear you just fine.
A lot of this really just for show. It hasn't really turned into anything. Although the last time this group was here was the last time that the SWAT teams engaged using more of the tear gas and that sort of thing, but they have quickly moved on. But we've seen they're just kind of making rounds. Really, Don, at this point, the people who are kind of left behind, it almost seems like a game to them. They were just across the street. They were clearing out a parking lot, and it was like a game of chase. Like a handful of people just running away from the cops. They get about 30, 40 yards away and start kind of giggling and laughing about what they were doing. So that's really what's left here. Except now, for the folks that are here, the cleanup is what is going to be, the big story here throughout the morning and into tomorrow as well.
Ed, you took a pretty big hit. You were shoved hard there. You doing okay?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Good.
I've gotten a million messages, so for all my friends and family who I haven't had a chance to respond, I'm fine. Actually, the more bizarre thing, about an hour after that happened, the guy found me again and apologized for what he did. Kind of a surreal moment. Asked him why he did it, what was wrong. Just kind of had a hard time explaining himself. So,
I think the live camera
rush of emotions
may have had something to do with that, because it would be pretty easy to find him since he did it on live television. But Ed, I want you to stand by. We'd like to use your camera if you can show the people cleaning up and some of the damage there as I interview at least the first part.
Yeah, we'll keep showing you the pictures.
The first part. I want to bring in now John Barnett. Is it John Barnett or John Bartlett?
John C. Barnett. Yes.
It's Barnett. John Barnett, who's a civil rights activist known as Brother John. I understand that you were one of the main speakers tonight at this conference, and then now you have this. What do you make of? We're looking at people now having to clean up their businesses and some of the chaos on the streets. What do you say about all this?
Well, I think it was definitely a split. We started out at Marshall Park tonight where we wanted to get everybody together. We had a couple of speakers, and our goal was to go down the street to Little Rock Amy Zion Church, and everybody go inside the church, where we could literally talk to the people about really how Dr. King initiated marches. They were very nonviolent. You know, Dr. King never threw a rock into a window. And unfortunately, we had some crowd, a small fragment of the crowd that went downtown, and there was a large group that came inside the church. And I think it was that moment when me and the pastor realized that that's the split between, that's the split that we need to get back mended together.
How do you do that? Because this does not help the message. This does not help get anything accomplished.
Yeah, we have to make sure that we get more men. We talked about men standing up in the community. National Geographic did a great story about African elephants real quick, and the mother's elephants and the youthful elephants. And they took the father elephants out of the tribe, and the youthful elephants took over the entire tribe. Well, when they opened up the gate and let the fathers back in, everything was back normal again. And it's imperative that we as Afro-American men, especially dealing with what we're dealing with in Charlotte, mostly Afro-American youth, let's be honest. We need Afro-American males to step up. So we have about 1,000 churches in Charlotte, and we had 3 pastors at the church tonight. I would want to charge another 60 to 70 to stand up. They're the leaders of the community. So I think one of the remedies is getting the leaders and the Afro-American men to step up. Because it's only when a father comes into the bedroom to say, hey, son, clean your room, when the mother tries over and over again to try to get the son to do it, it's when that male voice penetrates the spirit of that young, youthful person or that young man, where he begins to get up and clean his room.
Well, apparently you don't know my mother, because yeah, and you don't know my aunt and my sisters, and certainly they can get anybody to clean up anything that they want, even quicker than my father could. But I think what your point is that there needs to be better leadership within the community.
Yeah, exactly right. And I'm going to be honest, my grandmother was just like your mother and maybe your aunt, but my father was in the home. But I also had a pastor that would come by the house and talk to my mother. I knew my uncle next door. I knew the wino down the street. So even in the 70s, I think Hill Harper gave a great analogy on the Monique show. He said in 1976, 70% of Afro-American fathers were active in their children's lives. He said today in 2016 or 2014 when they did this interview on the Monique show, he said it's down to 31%. So my question is to all of your listeners, what happened to the 40% of Afro-American men that was active in their children's lives? You cannot go to a park and see an Afro-American father walking with his family. And so we got some internal problems that we need to deal with, and I think that's the ones that we're not dealing with. Yes, we're dealing with the rocks in the windows, and I hate to say it, yeah, they can be replaced. Mr. Scott's life cannot be replaced. But it's important that we also deal with the enemy inside of us, which is really getting those men to stand up in their community, take back the church. Churches are 80% Afro-American women. We got to get those men back active in whatever way we need to do it. And that's our state of emergency. I know the mayor just stated, the governor just stated it's a state of emergency. It's been state of emergency for the last 20 years for us. When, when Michael Jackson Thriller was on the airwaves and less rap music, life was good for me.
Yeah.
But now I wake up every morning. I'm full-time in civil rights. I was the first Afro-American black man to be the postal worker in Clover, South Carolina. But for the last 9 years, I've been active in civil rights because things have just gotten that ugly. Yeah. I marched in Sanford, Florida. I went to Gina, Louisiana. I went to Michael Brown's funeral. And it's like, wow, my life is spent trying to not only just go to save some of these young Afro-American males and women and girls, rather, but going to the funerals of Trayvon Martin and others.
There's a lot to unpack there. What you said, that we can always, there can always be more, people can always be more active in their children's lives. I think that some of the statistics may be about what happens maybe a little bit blown out of proportion, but I understand where you're coming from, and I appreciate you joining us here on CNN. John Barnett. Brother John Barnett. Yes. Thank you for joining us. When we come right back, much more in our breaking news tonight. Violent protests in the streets of Charlotte, North Carolina over a fatal police shooting, the city under a state of emergency tonight.
Mapping the oceans where we explore.
Protecting biodiversity everywhere we work. Defeating malaria. Improving energy efficiency.
Developing more clean-burning natural gas.
My job at ExxonMobil.
Turning algae into biofuels.
Reducing energy poverty.
In the developing world. Making cars go further with less.
Fueling the global economy.
And you thought we just made the gas.
Energy lives here.
They feel good?
No.
You wouldn't put up with part of a pair of glasses. So when it comes to pain relievers, why put up with part of a day?
These are not useful.
Live whole, not part. Aleve.
Sport your fall favorites. Find your style at Men's Warehouse during our fall wardrobe event. Buy one, get one free on great designer looks going on now. Men's Warehouse. Rise to the occasion.
If your heartburn medication's not doing its job, the food you eat during the day can also haunt you at night. So try Nexium 24-Hour. Just one pill each day shuts down your stomach's active acid pumps to stop the burn of frequent heartburn all day and night.
Have we seen them before?
Banish the burn with Nexium 24-Hour.
We'll find